Hello friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are going to be celebrating Holo Taco's 6th anniversary with their Bon Voyage collection. This is a limited edition release that features 6 new polishes including a new magnetic topper. We also have some holographic stickers as well as a bougie Louis Vuitton inspired luggage collection box. So as always, I will save more of my thoughts for the end after some comparisons. For now, let's get into the swatches. Just kidding. First, we're going to take a closer look at the collection box. So as you can see, it is very clearly Louis Vuitton inspired. The box itself is matte with a subtle kind of texture, and it has this gold detailing for the text and on the corners, and it also has a cute little handle. There's a little pull tab on the side which pulls out really easily. I kind of wish it was a bit more snug just for security purposes. And here's a closer look at the sticker sheet. There are 3 that come in here and they're all the same, so I'm just showing the one on top. But we have some stamps, the polishes, the collection box, and some other cute things. We also get a magnet for this collection, and the inside is very luxe with this blue suede kind of background and gold metallic boxes. Now getting into the collection, we're starting with Unicorn number 1, which is described as a bright, warm red orange shimmer in a royal purple translucent jelly base. So I at first did not realize that this was going to be a jelly kind of polish. I normally do love jellies, and I'm also very forgiving of shimmers that are sheer, but I don't know, for some reason I was a little underwhelmed with this one because of how sheer it was. I feel like we've seen a lot of purple polishes with a glowy red shimmer that are just a bit more opaque and more wham pow in your face, which I think it does get a little closer to that in 3 coats once you do build up the base even more and there's more contrast for that shimmer, but it definitely is a pretty polish. Next we have Sky Lounge, which is described as a cobalt blue metallic polish with smooth, shiny microflakes. The formula on this was really great. It was very full coverage, as you can see here on the first coat, but there are some bald spots and patchiness, though I do think it is fully covered up by the second coat. So even though it is filled with very tiny microflakies, it is a very dense formula. So I don't think a lot of people are going to need a 3rd coat to get this fully opaque, unless your nails are a lot longer and you also prefer doing much thinner coats. So yeah, definitely looks super stunning. I'm not the biggest fan of this finish, but I do love the color. Then we have Precious Cargo, which is described as a bronze linear holographic with a multi-chrome shimmer that shifts from red to gold to green. This one had another super flawless formula. It was incredibly full coverage on the first coat. Maybe not 100% opaque, but because it is so dark, I feel like you could get away with it if you're just in a rush and not super picky. But the formula is just so smooth and easy. You might as well do a 2nd coat while you're at it, and it builds up so beautifully. You get such a strong dark brown base that really lets that shimmer pop. Though I wouldn't agree with how this is described as being a red shimmer head on. It's definitely a lot more pink in my opinion, but it does still have a beautiful shift to gold and green. Next up we have Icon on Board, which is a hot pink semi-translucent buildable crully formula. So if I am remembering this correctly, this is Holo Taco's 2nd official crully formula, their first one being Devil's Advocate from the Dark Academia collection, and I just can't help but feel some type of way that they're including the next crully in a limited edition release, especially being this beautiful hot pink color. At least I think it deserves to be a permanent shade, but definitely let me know what you think. The formula on this was really great though. It was very even coverage, it's self-leveled really nicely, and it's a very pigmented kind of formula. So while I do wish that Holo Taco would just commit to pure jellies, I think this crully formula is more of a stepping stone for a lot of people. Then we have Wanderlust, which is a cornflower blue-purple crystal jelly base with a green to gold to orange iridescent shimmer. This one had another super beautiful formula that was just so smooth to apply, very even coverage for the most part. There is some patchiness or unevenness on that first coat, but I think it does even out a lot on the second coat, probably because the base is just a little bit of a darker shade, and the shimmer in this is just so strong and so glowy. It's also a bit of a larger shimmer particle, so I think it's very distracting of any visible nail line. So while it is obscured, it's not totally covered up, as you'll see a little bit later in the collage portion. But the color of this was so beautiful. I especially love the shift in the shimmer. And rounding out the collection, we have Magnetic Taco, which is a silver magnetic topper in a clear base. So because it's a topper, I'm going to be showing this layered on its own over pink smoothing base, over a white and black polish, as well as over the rest of the collection. And even though it is described as being a topper in like a clear base, because it is silver, you are still going to see some of those silver pigments, especially over lighter colors, but they do fully disappear over darker base colors, just leaving that stark silver magnetic pigment, which is super stunning, especially in the velvet effect. I loved the flash of it, especially over the blues in this collection, but it also does have a very crisp cat eye effect too. And I know I saw a couple of people a little bit worried seeing another magnetic from Holo Taco, but this definitely has a very reactive kind of formula, so it shouldn't be difficult to magnetize, especially because it is a topper. It's already going to be more of a thinner kind of consistency. And here are my swatches for the Bon Voyage collection. I'm wearing 2 coats each with glossy top coat. These are taken in bright indirect lighting, and I feel like the coverage looks great on them for the most part. The top 3 shades definitely do show the most visible nail line though, which is more apparent under my desk lighting here. So if your nails are on the longer side, you might want to do a 3rd coat if you don't like seeing visible nail line. The shimmer does distract from it, but only in specific lighting. Moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Unicorn number 1, and I knew I had to see this next to ILNP's Hallucinate, as well as Potion Polish's Midnight Oasis, which is basically a dupe for Sassy Sauce's Cockadoodle Doom. Both ILNP and Potion Polish are a lot more pigmented though, so you can see just how much more full coverage they look on 2 coats versus how sheer Unicorn number 1 is. I know that also comes down to personal preference. For these purples with a red shimmer, I just prefer a stronger contrast, so I like the more opaque ones. Since Unicorn number 1 was so sheer and it looked a bit of a lighter purple, I thought it might be kind of close to ILNP's Lightwave, which is their magnetic from last summer. That one does have an orangey copper kind of colored shimmer instead of red, and the most obvious difference is the much cooler shade of purple, so definitely not a dupe. Next for Sky Lounge, here it is next to Steep Dreams, which is a blue crushed hollow, so definitely a different formula, but I thought color-wise they might be kind of similar. But Steep Dreams ended up being a lot darker on the nail, so I wouldn't call those dupes at all. And I also included Moxie's Baker's Dozen, which is a teal linear hollow, kind of in place of Teal No Lies, which is just for color reference. I think some closer shades were actually from ILNP, so I pulled out Sea Glass and Invite Only. Sea Glass is more of that true cobalt sort of micro flaky shimmer formula, so it's not metallic like Sky Lounge, but definitely closer in color. Invite Only has a little bit of this almost teal sort of greenish undertone, so I definitely wouldn't call that a dupe, and Sky Lounge is also the most opaque out of both. And lastly, for some Mooncat comparisons, here it is next to House of Hades, which is their iconic cobalt blue micro flaky. That's in a deep indigo kind of base, so it has a very strong purple leaning color to it. But I actually think the closer shade is this older Live Love Polish shade called Confetti Dreams. That one's kind of a pigmented shimmer with a hollow glitter mixed in. So it is a little bit of a different formula or finish, but I think color-wise it is really close. I do have one more quick comparison for Sky Lounge. Here it is next to Cracked Polish's Nuclear Coolant, which is more of that smoother, shimmery metallic kind of finish. So it's missing that visual flaky kind of texture, but I feel like color-wise it's kind of close. Nuclear Coolant is just a little bit darker. Next for Precious Cargo, I saw a lot of people saying that this was reminding them of Existential Crisis. I can see that because they do have the same kind of multi-chrome shimmer going from pink to yellow to green, but Existential Crisis has more of a darkened teal base color and more of a scattered hollow glitter as opposed to the linear hollow of Precious Cargo. And since it's a brown base, I figured I could also show it next to Mooncat's Boa Constrictor, but that has a much warmer undertone. I also saw on Reddit somebody suggest ILNP's Revival being a potential dupe. I unfortunately don't have this one in my collection, but I wanted to include some photos since they do look really similar. I think I would say that Revival has more of a scattered hollow effect versus a linear hollow though, and maybe it's in a darker base. And in a similar vein, here it is next to some photos of Cirque Scorched Sorceress, which is another brown kind of base with this fiery shimmer, but the shimmer is a little bit more copper leaning head on. It's not as pink as in Precious Cargo, and it's also a shimmer graphic, so it has a scattered hollow glitter. Next for Icon on Board, here it is next to Life in Plastic from a previous anniversary collection. That one obviously has these holographic glitters, but it does have a hot pink crully base, and I would say that they're very similar, especially in terms of the formula and coverage, but color-wise, I think Life in Plastic is a little bit warmer. I did also want to compare it next to a couple of ILNP creams. So first we have Daytrip from their recent Heat Waves collection, as well as Two Piece, which is a more vibrant neon kind of hot pink, but I think Daytrip is also brighter than Icon on Board, and both of those are a little bit more warmer toned as well. I feel like here you can really see how much cooler toned Icon on Board is. A few other pink comparisons I have are with Cracked Polish's Cheeky Bottoms, which is another neon pink cream. That one is cool toned, but several shades lighter and more white based. When it comes to a hot pink crelly, I have Static's Pink is My Kink, which is definitely the closest in formula to Icon on Board, but it is a little bit warmer. Next for Wanderlust, I was immediately reminded of Light Link, even though it does have a very different shade of blue. It's much lighter and a little more aqua or turquoise leaning. The shimmer color is still very similar, where it goes from yellow to green and blue in very extreme angles, but it's a lot more finely milled. And I was also reminded of Mooncat's Mercury's Tears, but that ended up being a lot more different than I thought. It has a bit of a brighter blue base and a more obvious pink shimmer head on, but in extreme lighting they do have that similar shift to that greenish blue color. And lastly, I wanted to show it next to Rogue's Persuasion, which unfortunately my bottle is a bit faded, so it's more blue than it originally was. But even with the original blurple kind of color, it would have been a little too light to match Wanderlust. I do think the shimmer does have a similar color shift, but it's obviously a lot more finely milled in Rogue. And lastly for Magnetic Taco, here it is next to Cirque's Chemistry, which is their silver magnetic topper. So I'm going to be showing this in one coat over my bare nail, or at least with a base coat, so you can see the dispersion of the magnetic pigments or just the silver pigments in the clear base. I think it's a little bit more noticeable in Cirque's Chemistry, so you get a cleaner look with Holo Taco. And interestingly, over black, I feel like there's a bit of a color difference where Holo Taco has a bit more of a stark silvery white color. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Holo Taco's Bon Voyage collection. As I mentioned before, this is a limited edition release, so if you are interested in the polishes, the stickers, or of course the collection box, I will have Holo Taco's website linked down below. And of course, I would love to hear your thoughts on this release because I have some mixed feelings. Objectively speaking, the polishes are great. There's nothing bad about them necessarily. Maybe, again, again, with the exception of Unicorn #1, where I was a little unimpressed with the coverage, but formula-wise, they are all really nice polishes and great quality, just, you know, what you would expect from Holo Taco. I think the main thing for me is just the lack of cohesion, where I do get how these polishes are beautiful in their own ways, but I don't know, it just seems like, you know, as a collection, it feels like a little random, so I would have loved to see a stronger through line for these shades. But if anything, my biggest gripe with this release is just having a couple of polishes that are just what I would consider more basic or maybe just like staple shades be a part of something that's limited edition, specifically the hot pink or the magnetic topper. I feel like both of those should be polishes that should be considered permanent in their catalog, and I would not be surprised if Holo Royalty is able to bring them back permanently. So while that is great, I feel like it's kind of a waste to include them in this collection. I would have just preferred seeing them brought back later in a different permanent release, just so we can have something a little bit more unique for a limited edition release, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's really an unpopular opinion or not, but that's just kind of how I feel about them. Again, I do think they are beautiful shades. They are all very unique, especially to Holo Taco's catalog. But if you are like me, where you are interested in a lot of other indie brands and you already have like a decent sized collection, I can see how some of these shades just don't stand out as much and don't feel as special for something that should be very special. So make sure you let me know what you think about that down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!